In October 2018, a father and son set out on what seemed like a routine 3-day hike in the Great Smokies. They never returned home. For 5 years, their disappearance remained one of Tennessee's most baffling unsolved mysteries, until a wildlife expert's drone captured footage that changed everything. What the drone captured not only solved the mystery, it revealed a shocking truth that would tear a family apart forever. October 15th, 2018. Sarah Martinez stared at her phone for the umpteenth time that evening. It was 8:47 p.m. David and Jake were supposed to be home 3 hours ago. She dialed David's number again, straight to his answering machine. With shaking hands, she scrolled through her contacts, finding the number she hoped she'd never have to dial. Great Smoky National Park Emergency Services. Ranger Thompson speaking. My ex-husband and my son. They were supposed to be back from camping today. They're not answering their phones. 3 days earlier, David Martinez had said goodbye to his ex-wife outside her Knoxville home. Their 16-year-old son, Jake, stood excitedly by his father's pickup truck, loaded with camping gear. We'll be back by 6 on Sunday, David promised. 3 days at Cataract Falls. Jake had been looking forward to it for months. Sarah watched them drive away, unaware that this would be the last time she'd see them alive. David Martinez was more than just a weekend camper. For more than 20 years, he had walked these mountains. He knew every trail, every hiding place, every dangerous creek crossing. As a Boy Scout leader, he had taught dozens of boys how to survive in the wilderness. If anyone could keep Jake safe in the Smokies, it was David. But now they were gone. What happened in those mountains had remained a secret for 5 long years, and when the truth finally emerged, it was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. At dawn on October 16th, a search and rescue team assembled at the trailhead for Cataract Falls. David's blue Ford pickup was parked where he had left it 3 days earlier. The truck was unlocked, the keys still in the ignition. Nothing appeared to have been disturbed. Detective Maria Santos arrived on the scene at 7 in the morning. She had worked missing persons cases in the Smokies before, but something about this one seemed different. The car was clean, she told Ranger Thompson. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing missing except their camping gear. The trail log was signed by David at 2:30 in the afternoon of October 13th. His handwriting was neat, confident. D. Martinez plus son, 3-day hike, Cataract Falls area. The bloodhounds picked up the scent right away. The trail was clear for the first 1.5 miles, following the standard route to Cataract Falls. Then something strange happened. The dogs stopped. They circled and whined and lost the scent completely. That was not normal, said handler Jim Collins. These dogs can track for a mile, even after a rain. But it didn't rain. A sudden thunderstorm swept through the mountains on October 14th, followed by an unusual early snowfall. The weather was against them. For 48 hours, crews combed every inch of Cataract Falls. Helicopters flew overhead, but the dense forest canopy made visibility nearly impossible. Ground crews checked every cave, every shelter, every dangerous crossing. They found nothing. By October 18th, the search had covered more than 50 square miles. Local news crews arrived. Volunteers from Knoxville drove up to join the search. David's construction crew took time off to help with the search. Still nothing. We have to explore all possibilities, Detective Santos told Sarah during a difficult conversation on the 4th day. An accidental fall, an animal attack, lost and dying of hypothermia, or what? Sometimes people choose to disappear. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. David would never abandon Jake. Never. But as the days passed, that possibility began to haunt everyone involved. The investigation into David's life had exposed cracks in the image of a devoted father and seasoned outdoorsman. Detective Santos sat across from Sarah at the Knoxville police station, a manila folder full of financial documents between them. "Did you know about the debt?" Santos asked softly. Sarah stared at the papers. Credit card statements with balances of $30,000. Personal loan documents, a second mortgage on David's house that she'd never heard of. "I don't understand," she whispered. "We divided everything up in the divorce. He claimed to be in good shape financially. Their combined debt was nearly $80,000. Worse, Jake's mother, Sarah, was pressuring David for overdue child support payments. A court hearing was scheduled for October 20th, 5 days after he and Jake disappeared. "There's more," Santos said. David had taken sick days on October 10th and 11th. His boss said he seemed tense, distracted. He'd asked about early withdrawal of his retirement savings. Sarah's brother-in-law, Miguel Martinez, painted a different picture. David wasn't running from anything, he insisted. He lived for that boy. You should see them together on their hikes. Jake idolized his father. But even Miguel admitted that David had been acting strange lately. "Last month, he asked me to promise him something weird. He said that if anything happened to him, I should make sure Jake knew how much he loved him. I thought he was just being dramatic." Jake's girlfriend, Emma Chin, added another disturbing detail. Jake said his dad had talked about starting over somewhere. I thought he meant moving to a new city or something. Jake was excited about that. Insurance complicated things. David had a $200,000 life insurance policy, with Jake as the primary beneficiary. Since Jake was a minor, Sarah would have control of the money if they were both declared dead. "I don't want the money," Sarah Santos said. "I want my son back." After 3 weeks of searching, nighttime temperatures in the mountains dropped below freezing. Survival experts said the chances of anyone surviving more than a few days in such conditions were slim. On November 15th, exactly 1 month after the disappearance, the active search was officially called off. The first year had been the hardest. Sarah refused to give up hope. She hired a private investigator who turned up nothing new. She organized monthly search parties with volunteers who covered areas that official search parties might miss. Every few months, there would be false alarms. A hiker would report seeing 2 people who looked like them. Security cameras at gas stations miles away would record grainy footage of men who looked the same. Every lead led nowhere. The East Tennessee mountain community embraced Jake and David's memory. Annual memorial hikes drew hundreds to the Smokies. A scholarship fund was established in Jake's name for students interested in environmental science. But as the second year began, even the most optimistic supporters began to accept the inevitable truth. "They're gone," Sarah told Miguel during one of their regular coffee meetings. "David would have contacted us by now if he could." Something happened out there. The insurance company was getting impatient. Legal declaration of death typically requires 7 years of absence, but exceptions can be made in cases involving dangerous circumstances. By the 3rd year, Sarah had started seeing a psychologist. The sessions helped, but the questions continued to plague her. What had really happened? Why couldn't they find any trace? In the 4th year, facing mounting legal pressure and her own emotional exhaustion, Sarah finally agreed to be declared dead. The papers were filed in March 2022, nearly 4 years after the disappearance. The $200,000 insurance payment went to Sarah as Jake's legal guardian. She used most of it to pay off her mortgage and put the rest in a savings account. The money felt like blood money. Payment for a tragedy she still didn't understand. Meanwhile, 600 miles away, in graduate school at the University of Georgia, Dr. Rebecca Chen was perfecting drone technology that would change everything. Her research focused on black bear populations in remote wilderness areas, places too dangerous for traditional field work. Little did she know, her drones would soon solve one of Tennessee's most puzzling missing person stories. September 23rd. 2023. Doctor. Rebecca Chen launched her drone from a remote ridge 8 miles northeast of Cataract Falls. The area she was surveying had never been searched during the Martinez investigation. It was too remote, too dangerous, and too far from an established trail system. The terrain was harsh, steep gullies carved by centuries of water erosion, dense forest that blocked most of the sunlight, landslides that could kill an experienced climber. At 2:47 in the afternoon, something on her monitor caught Chen's attention. In a valley so remote, it didn't appear on most hiking maps. The drone's camera picked up geometric shapes that didn't belong in nature. "What are these?" she muttered, adjusting the camera's focus. The shapes were covered in forest vegetation, barely visible even from above, but they were definitely man-made, rectangular shapes, what looked like tarps or shelter material. Chen immediately contacted Park Ranger Thompson, the same ranger who had taken Sarah's panicked call 5 years earlier. "I need an extraction team at these coordinates," she told him. "I think I've found something." 2 days later, a specialized rescue team descended into the valley. What they found defied explanation: a vast wilderness campsite, not a temporary shelter, but something built for long-term survival. A lean-to shelter fortified with branches and rocks. A fire pit surrounded by carefully placed rocks. Food storage containers hung from trees to keep bears out and scattered around the camp. Camping gear matching the list Sarah had provided 5 years ago. That was them. Ranger Thompson confirmed over the radio. We had found David and Jake's camp, but where were David and Jake? The team searched the immediate area and discovered something that made their blood run cold. Hidden under a camouflage tarp, weighted down with rocks and protected from the elements, was a journal. The leather book was filled with David Martinez's handwriting. The first entry was dated October 13th, 2018, the day they disappeared. The last entry was dated March 20th, 2019. They had been surviving in the wild for 5 months. Detective Santos called Sarah at 6 p.m. on September 27th, 2023. "We need you to come to the station. We found them. Are they alive?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "No, but we found answers." In the precinct conference room, Santos opened David's journal to the first entry, October 13th, 2018. "Jake doesn't know it yet, but we're not going home. At least, not the way we planned. I've lied to everyone, including myself. The debt is worse than I told Sarah. Child support is threatening jail. I can't go to jail. I can't leave Jake alone. It's the only way." Sarah's hands shook as she read her ex-husband's words. He planned this. He planned to disappear. Santos turned to the next entry, October 14th, 2018. "Told Jake about today's change of route. He thinks we're just extending our trek. I've been stocking up in this valley for 3 weeks. Food, water purification tablets, winter clothes. Jake doesn't suspect a thing yet. He's just glad we're staying on the trip longer." The early entries paint a picture of careful planning and a desperate father trying to escape his problems. David has been secretly preparing for months. He's researched off-grid living, found remote locations, and systematically collected supplies. But Jake wasn't a willing participant, at least not at the beginning. October 20th, 2018. Jake asks when we're going home. I had to tell him the truth about the legal problems. He's angry and scared. Called me selfish, and I guess he's right, but what choice did I have? Jail won't help anyone. November 2nd, 2018. Jake adapts better than I expected. His scouting skills save our lives. He's built a better water collection system than I have. Still asks about Mom every day. I tell him we'll contact her when it's safe. Winter footage showed father and son working together to survive. They hunted small game, gathered food, and maintained their shelter in the harsh mountain environment. Jake's anger gradually turned to acceptance, then cooperation. December 25th, 2018. Jake made me a Christmas present of pine needles and bark. With Mom around, he said, he knew she was worried. We were both losing weight, but staying strong. Jake was becoming a man here. February 10th, 2019. Saw the search helicopters again. Jake wanted to signal them. I convinced him we weren't ready. It takes more time to plan my next move. Jake begins to question my judgment, but in March, the tone changes abruptly. March 15th, 2019. Everything is ruined. Jake fell while gathering firewood from a cliff. The rope attachment gave way, a 30-foot fall onto rocks. I got to him as fast as I could, but his injuries were too severe. There was no way to get help without exposing myself. My son is dying, and it is my fault. March 16th, 2019. Jake died at dawn. I held him all night. His last words were, "Tell Mommy I love her." I buried him where he could see the mountains he loved. I cannot live with what I have done. March 20th, 2019. This is my final entry. Sarah, if you ever read this, know that I love Jake more than my own life. I thought I was protecting him. Instead, I killed him. I'm going to join him now. We'll be together. I'm sorry for everything. The conference room was silent except for Sarah's soft sobs. Based on the journal entries, search parties located Jake's burial site on a ridge overlooking the valley. David had built a neat stone mound to mark the spot. The 16-year-old's remains were found exactly where his father had described. David's body was discovered at the base of a 200-foot cliff 2 miles from camp. The fall was clearly intentional. He survived Jake's death by 4 days before taking his own life. The coroner's report confirmed the timeline. Both died in March 2019, meaning they had been surviving in the wild for 5 months. Jake's death was an accident, Detective Santos explained to the assembled family. The climbing harness had given out while he was collecting firewood. David's death was a suicide. The revelation devastated everyone in different ways. Sarah felt a complex mix of grief, anger, and heartache. Her son had died because of his father's selfish decision to flee, but she also understood David's desperation and the impossible situation he had put himself in. Miguel Martinez struggled with his brother's choices. David wasn't a bad person, he told reporters. He was a desperate man who made terrible decisions. Emma Chen, now a student, recalled Jake's final messages differently. He was excited about the camping trip, but he was also worried about his father. Jake said David was acting strange, making cryptic comments about his new adventures. Too bad Jake didn't tell anyone. The insurance investigation was complicated. David had technically committed fraud by faking his own death, but he was also truly dead. The insurance company ultimately decided not to prosecute Sarah, who was clearly an innocent victim. The legal implications were confusing. David's debts died with him, but moral questions remained. Was he a loving father driven to desperate measures, or a selfish man who put his son in danger? The community remained divided. Some saw David as a tragic figure, broken by circumstance. Others saw him as a criminal who had caused his son's death through reckless decisions. Sarah, grieving for Jake, defended David. He wasn't evil, she told the Knoxville News Sentinel. He was broken. Desperate people make desperate decisions. The revelation raised uncomfortable questions about mental health, financial pressures, and family support systems. Could David's tragedy have been prevented if he had asked for help instead of running away? David's situation, crushing debt, legal troubles, family pressures, was tragically common. But most people in similar circumstances don't disappear into the wilderness with their children. David's mistake was thinking he had to do it alone, said Dr. Patricia Williams, a family crisis psychologist who studied the case. He saw disappearing as his only option when other solutions existed. Sarah used some of the insurance money to start the Jake Martinez Memorial Fund, which provides emergency financial assistance to families facing child support crises. The fund has helped dozens of families escape the despair that consumed David. She has also advocated for better mental health resources for divorced fathers struggling financially. If David had talked to someone, a therapist, a support group, even just a friend, he might have seen other options. Miguel Martinez finally found peace with his brother's memory. David loved Jake more than anything. He made terrible decisions, but he was driven by love. That doesn't excuse what happened, but it helps me understand. On a cold October morning in 2023, exactly 5 years after he disappeared, Sarah Martinez stood at Jake's grave in Highland Memorial Cemetery in Knoxville. Father and son were finally buried together. Their 5-year separation was over. Hundreds attended the funeral. Fellow hikers, Jake's classmates, David's co-workers, and community members who had followed the story for years. In her eulogy, Sarah focused on the David she remembered before despair took hold. David taught Jake to love nature, to be self-sufficient, to protect those he cared about. Those lessons helped them survive 5 months in impossible conditions. David's latest mistake doesn't erase the good father he was for 16 years. Sarah went back to work as a nurse, finding meaning in helping others in their darkest moments. She never remarried, focusing her energy on memorializing Jake and preventing similar tragedies from happening to other families. On quiet evenings, she sometimes reads David's writings that aren't about their survival. Passages in which he wrote about Jake's intelligence, his humor, his growing maturity. They remind her of the father David was before fear and despair destroyed him. "I forgive David," she says now, "not because what he did was right, but because forgiveness is how I heal." Jake would want us to forgive. The mountains kept their secret for 5 years, but technology and persistence finally revealed the truth. Sometimes the most incredible discoveries are not in what we find, but in what we understand, how ordinary people, faced with impossible circumstances, can make decisions that change everything forever. In the end, David Martinez got it. He and Jake were together, but the price was higher than anyone could pay.